Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed this or not, but I'm getting the feeling that Ruben Amorim likes a 3-4-3. The reason for that is because tactically it gives him a potentially unique weapon via the two wingbacks. You see, most teams that play in a back four don't physically have wingbacks in their team, so for Ruben Amorim this is potentially something unique, something that makes United different to every other team in the league. Or at least it should be. Right now, it feels like a bit more of a weakness. Now, in theory, one of the benefits of having wingbacks should be the width that they provide. You see, naturally, wingbacks hold wide starting positions, and we know that in football, teams typically like to try and make the pitch as big as possible. The reason why you want to do that is to try and stretch the opposition. For example, if all of your players are really narrow, really compact, then the opposition can do the exact same. They can get all their players really close to each other, and it just becomes a little bit congested, and there's no way through. Therefore, if you use width with wingbacks like Dalot and Dorgu holding these wide positions, the thought is that you can probably stretch the opposition horizontally across the pitch. The opposition have to open up just a little bit to try and cover these players. Of course, if the opposition are opening up, there's potentially more room to exploit. In particular, one of the things we're looking for is quick switches to these wide players. So for example, United might be playing down the left-hand side with Patrick Dorgu. The opposition are going to come across to try and deal with that. However, if we are able to work the ball in these situations, perhaps into midfield to someone like Bruno Fernandes, then we have a wing-back on the far side, Diogo Dalot, that we can switch the ball to. So we can pick the ball up in this position, switch out to the far side, and now we have width and we have an ability to get forward. This is one of the reasons why wing-backs should be useful. Now, to be fair, United have been doing this, particularly working from the other side, working from the right towards the left. We've seen United moving the ball down the right-hand side of the pitch, moving the ball back into midfield, and then eventually working it, if we just move these defenders, working the ball on the switch to the far side to Patrick Dorgu in positions like this. How many times have we seen Patrick Dorgu in the final third this season? This is one of the benefits of using wing-backs. You can quickly pounce forward into the space and exploit an opposition weakness. The problem for United, in terms of not making the most of the wing-backs, is the personnel, the profiles of the two wing-backs that we use. Often it's Dorgu on the left and then Dalot or Mazraoui on the right. Of course, with Ahmad, things are a little bit different. But let's say it is Dorgu on the left-hand side. He gets himself into the final third. He's got all this space, which tactically is brilliant. Then when he looks to deliver into the final third, he just doesn't have the quality. Patrick Dorgu at this moment in time is not a specialist crosser. And this is a bit of a problem for United. In terms of the most crosses attempted into the box, two of United's top four are Patrick Dorgu and Diogo Dalot. Two players that I've just said can't cross. So tactically, in terms of space manipulation, we are working this situation well. We are getting into good areas. But for me, there is something slightly flawed when two of your highest crossers are players that can't cross, which actually turns it into a bit of a weakness, because when you get into the final third, you look to break a team down, we're ending up with rather poor quality and we're just wasting these moments. Now, in theory, there should also be a benefit to using centre-backs when you're trying to break down a low block. So when the opposition are behind the ball, they've got their four defenders here lined up in the penalty area. They've probably got midfielders in front of them as well, and maybe even wide players dropping into deeper positions. In theory, the wing-backs should be very, very useful here because, again, initially, they provide traditional, natural width. They are wide on the pitch, and we know that's going to stretch the opposition. So as these players are stretched wider, we know that these channels of space can open up. But the other reason why these players are potentially useful in these positions is actually because of the numerical overload that we create. So if most teams are going to defend with a back four, like they do in the Premier League, the wing-backs potentially allow United to attack with five. Five is more than four. Just a quick maths lesson for you there, which means United should be able to exploit the opposition. And in particular, we should be able to find ourselves in between opposition players. So for example, the opposition don't really have one player that they are supposed to be marking. This fullback, for example, is keeping an eye on Dorgu the wingback, but also Cunha the inside forward. This centre-back is looking at Cunha and Šeško. This centre-back is looking at Šeško and Mbumo, and then the fullback is looking at Mbumo and Dalot. Of course, the benefit of this is that we should be able to get into channels, firstly. So for example, we may be able to draw this fullback out and then slide the ball in behind Cunha in this position here. But the other thing is that our wing-backs should be able to get time on the ball because the opposition don't want to leave this space in behind. So instead, what they will likely do is once again drop their defender into this position with Cunha. What this now means is that Dorgu and Dalot, our wing-backs, have space out wide. Now again, we've got that problem with they're not great crossers of the ball, which is a problem. So we don't have that method of breaking the opposition down. So the other option really is for them to be expressive and to take players on 1 versus 1. And this is where, again, potentially a strength in terms of numerically, we've got players in good positions, but in terms of the profiles, are Dalot or Dorgu 1v1 specialists? Are they players that can isolate fullbacks multiple times in a football match and look to take them on, look to break them down and make a bit of magic happen? Probably not. And this is a bit of a problem. If we look at Arsenal, for example, they have Noni Madueke playing this position wide on the right-hand side. He is the one responsible in the final third. Of course, a 1v1 expert, someone who attacks really well. If you look at United with Dalot and Dorgu, we of course get something different. So again, the shape isn't necessarily the problem here. We can attack with an overload, we can find room out wide. The problem is we've got the wrong profiles in these positions. So again, it sort of becomes a weakness as we become predictable in the final third and are forced to play the ball backwards. Now, despite what a lot of people will have you believe, the wing-back should also be useful from a defensive point of view and should actually help us be really aggressive out of possession, potentially squeeze really high and suffocate the opposition in a man-to-man press. The reason why this can work is because they are wing-backs as opposed to full-back, so for them to squeeze higher, they haven't got as much ground to cover. Let's say you are a full-back in a back four, like Diogo Dalot here, for example, it's quite difficult for him to jump out all the way to the high press. However, when he's a wing-back, he already should be starting in a higher position. So in terms of pressing the opposition, it's a little bit easier. For example, if you wanted to, you could push your two wing-backs all the way onto the opposition full-backs, like so, and then ask your three in the middle to narrow off like this. Now, what we can see here is that United have now essentially gone man-to-man all over the park. And the reason why this has been made possible is because the wing-backs start in a more advanced position, so they can be pushed forward, and Manchester United could potentially, using Ruben Amorim's system, be really aggressive in the high press. However, this is where it actually, in reality, is more of a problem. You see, theoretically, United should be able to be aggressive, but in terms of the way that Ruben Amorim actually expresses himself with the way that he gets his team on the pitch, it's a bit more passive. Rather than having the wing-backs super high connecting to the press, what we actually see is wing-backs that are a little bit deeper and can actually be pinned quite easily by the opposition wingers. Now, of course, we can see that rather than this system making us aggressive, it's actually going to make us passive. Because rather than being man-to-man and committing really high up the pitch and squeezing the opposition, we can see that the opposition now actually have much more space than what we would like. And the reason for that is because our wing-backs are pinned back. So again, what I'm trying to make incredibly clear here is that the 3-4-3 is not necessarily the problem. You can play a 3-4-3, but it's about how you play it. It's your ideas, it's your philosophy within the system. If we were aggressive, if we were a front-footed team, there's every chance that we would push our wing-backs further up the pitch in the press and go man-to-man. But as we're not, we leave them a little bit deeper, we leave them pinned in defensive positions, and again, we become passive, and the wing-backs actually become a weakness once again. Now, for me personally, it's these things sort of added together which causes a bit of confusion at Manchester United. There's a lot of debate about whether the 3-4-3 is good enough. It absolutely can be. It's about how you use it, how aggressive you are within your structure. At the moment, Manchester United feel confused. There are moments where we try and press and we're quite aggressive, but we don't know what to do with our wing-backs. You see, we don't have them in defensive positions like a full-back, so they don't fully cover our centre-backs. But also, we don't play them high like wingers, so we don't always support the attack. Instead, they sort of end up a little bit in between. And if you watch Manchester United, that makes perfect sense. How often does it feel that we're caught in between? We're caught not knowing what to do. For me right now, the wing-backs are really personifying everything wrong with what we're trying to do tactically. The idea of what we could be, I actually think is fairly obvious. But in terms of the execution on the football pitch, we've got a bit of a problem. We can see moments where these wing-backs with their distances, they're just all sorts of caught out. They're all over the place. In an instance like this, the wing-back is far too high, leaving so much space in behind. So defensively, we are lacking because we don't have full-back coverage. Yet in another moment, the problem's the complete opposite. For example, our wing-backs will be really deep. We will win the ball in midfield, but when we try and counter-attack, because the wing-backs are deep and the inside forwards are narrow, then we don't have any immediate width, like this example against Manchester City. We don't have immediate width because the inside forward is narrow and there's no winger, there's no flying fullback. So this is the problem. Our wingbacks feel a little bit confused. Ruben Amorim's usage of the wingbacks feel confused. That's not to say that wingbacks are a bad thing in football. They absolutely are not. They can be incredibly useful to get you playing on the front foot, to attack quick, to exploit the opposition's back line. They can also be used defensively to squeeze really high and put the opposition under pressure. At the moment, Manchester United are just perhaps using them in the wrong way. Now, hopefully that little breakdown there has given you a bit of a clearer picture of perhaps why Amorim is using wingbacks. You can see perhaps what he wants to achieve, what the ideal situation is in terms of how Manchester United end up long term, further down the line, but also why right now it isn't working. Perhaps in attacking moments, they are just the wrong players, which is why it's a little bit weird that we didn't sign any wingbacks in the summer. A little bit odd. But you can see that in moments, Dorgu shouldn't be the main man putting loads of crosses into the box. He also shouldn't be the man responsible for going 1 versus 1 against fullbacks. It's never going to be ideal. You can see defensively, we could use our wingbacks really aggressively to pin the opposition, but instead we feel a little bit confused and we're sort of caught in between, not quite knowing what to do. So I don't think wingbacks are outright a bad thing, a bad idea. I just think right now we're not getting the most out of them. If you would like a video on how we can get more from our wingbacks, how we can change the profiles of players there to turn a weakness into a weapon, then let me know in the comments down below, because I would love to look into that. We know we've got someone like Ahmad, for example, who might be able to make more of a difference from this position. So if you would like that video, let me know in the comments. But apart from that, I believe we're finished for today. There's nothing wrong with wingbacks. It's just something a little bit wrong with how we are currently trying to use them. And of course, that causes problems on the football pitch. That is the takeaway thought from this video. But apart from that, we are finished. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a like, subscribe, and get your notifications on so you never miss an upload. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.